to think outside the box, so to speak, to create in their minds methodologies to attack a problem, so that they're more open-minded to doing other problems when they appear.
Can
Some
that
of
be
these I
learned
don't
on the
feel-
fly?
Pardon, say again?
Can that be learned on the fly?
Well, and that's a concern that I have. I don't know that they're giving them enough direction to find an answer. What I see for a couple of them anyway, it looks like there's gonna be more frustration than there is support in them being
Is
excited
there
about finding a problem.
ambiguity?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's my greatest concern is what am I supposed to do? What am I doing? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it this way? Because I don't think that there's enough prior knowledge to be able to attack some of these problems.
Well, I mean, I disagree, because if you go into a second grade classroom, the hundreds chart's gonna be on the wall, there's gonna be a number line on, there's a lot of resources that the kids have. Like, I don't think a teacher gives this to a kid to do without saying, use your resources. So if you look at the problem, you're hoping the teacher has enough sense to do the problem solving when the kids have enough prior knowledge. Now, like if you're a second grade teacher and this is how you wanna introduce adding two-digit numbers, just to see where the kids are, you might have some frustration, but you might not, because kids are intrepid and, again, they know how to use that hundreds chart pretty easily to actually just do it on the hundreds chart, I guess.
Except you have a whole range of kids, and for these, definitely you're gonna have that group that's gonna be intrepid and gonna search it out and figure it out, and, because they have to. But you're still gonna have another group that is not as motivated, don't have the need to find out, reach a block and that's where they stop instead of pushing through it.
So the kids are doing this by themselves?
Hard to know.
Okay, couple of questions. So, we're talking about hypothetical classroom situations. Also add into there, what would your best teacher do to resolve that concern?
Now there's a true variable, because I have some teachers who wouldn't have the 100 chart, the line on the board, they wouldn't have the prep work done, the clues kind of planted so the kids could look around and search and see. I have teachers like that, whereas I have other teachers who are incredible at that. See, that's where you're coming from. But they would be prepared, they would have clues, they would be there to give them hints, they would.
But in my
do
opinion,
those things.
teacher A wouldn't even do this.
Probably true.
Teacher A wouldn't even give them this kind of problem to do, I think.
Maybe
And
that's
so,
true.
They would shy away from it.
yeah, so I think when we're looking at this, if we just looked at, if we look at just the task itself, is this what are the pros of this math task itself on any of these math tasks? Kids are gonna struggle, even good students are gonna struggle to put 11 eighths on the number line,
That's true.
because GT kids will tell you right away, 11 eighths, you can't even draw that. When they get to 7th grade, they have forgotten so much of their basic fraction concepts, because they've manipulated them so many different ways that they,
But
so,
why have they forgotten?
because they haven't drawn pictures in years,
It's very
especially.
abstract.
And because their teacher said, oh, these kids don't need to draw pictures,
Right.
because they could do the problem so quickly. So then if you're the teacher and you say, okay, well, let's just start out by, how would you draw 11 eighths? Because I've done this problem with my middle school students, because I have this book. And they told me, Miss Brand, we cannot do this problem, because you cannot have 11 eighths. You cannot have a bigger number on the top. And I said, I'm telling you right now, you can do it, and you can draw 11 eighths, and so I'm gonna ask you to go back to 3rd grade and 4th grade when I was your teacher, and, because it was my former students I was teaching, I said, I want you to go back, and how can you draw 11 eighths? And you're gonna have to think about everything you know about fractions. So that's all I had to do to get everybody started, and so are these worthwhile mathematical tasks? Yes, they are. They build numeracy. I didn't make my kids do them by themselves, but I could have. I mean, I guess Vanderwall's not telling you, do you use this as an assessment, or do you just use it as a problem-solving challenge?
Okay, but let me interject. What you did just now, what you did is you interjected into the problem clues. You said, yes, you can, and you need to go back at this, you need to draw pictures, you gave them a whole bunch of clues that's gonna assist them.
But that's what
in coming
Vanderbilt
up with
says
the-
to do. That's what Vanderbilt says, to ask facilitating
Where did you
questions.
say that in here? You didn't.
Okay, so,
That's a concern.
that would be, how do you help them with the ambiguity? You give them a heuristic, some sort of problem-solving technique. Well, when I run across the problem, how do I solve it? What do I do first?
But see, you have some teachers like this who automatically know that that's what you have to do and need to do, and God, they're outstanding teachers. But not all of your teachers are that on top of it, they just aren't. Okay, here's a problem, do it. And they go and maybe look and evaluate, but they're not doing what she did, which was, guys, yes, you can draw this, remember back here, past knowledge, blah, blah. And what she's doing is she's shepherding them, she's directing them, and wow, yeah, but she's an inspired teacher and it helps. Not all
Okay,
teachers
so
are
how
like
do
But I don't think I
All
was
of
an
your
inspired
teachers like
teacher, I
him.
was a teacher who read this book.
that. No, you're an inspired
That
teacher.
might make you an inspired teacher.
But again, I think, you know, that's our
Dr. West
task.
is volunteering to get a DNA sample and we'll just clone you. How's that?
There you go, accept.
Teachers must know what prior TEKS their students are supposed to have.
Right.
That will be done with your teachers, maybe not today, but tomorrow in the math instruction. They're gonna go back and look at their prior TEKS. Even my star student, Margaret, said to me yesterday, 8th grade science, said, I really need to go back and look at the 7th and 8th grade TEKS.
But how many teachers are gonna do that?
How many principals are gonna require them to do that?
And here's where this team planning comes into play. That's what they're supposed to be, when teachers are doing lesson planning, they're supposed to be saying, what do my kids need to know? Because the biggest problem I had this year was that my 6th grade teachers, very willingly and able, working 12-hour days, wanted to teach that 6th grade lesson, but they forgot that, listen, what is it that they have to know before you start? And then they all say, well, they didn't know it. Okay, so then what do you do? What is your job? Because 50% of the kids are gonna forget that they learned it the year before, you know, and that has to be accounted for in your lesson plans. And so it's in the lesson planning process that you do that. And I think in PLCs, like, you know, that's where Dr. Browning, you know, was such a inspiration to our group of math teachers, because we said, we don't know how to teach this way in 7th grade math. And so she said, well, would y'all be willing to come on Saturdays? And my whole department, we came 7 or 8 Saturdays for half a day, just learning how to teach proportions with Cuisenaire rods, learning how to teach adding and subtracting integers with algebra tiles, you know, all those things, you know, came as a department. We just, you know, collectively agreed because our principal was leading us that way and Dr. Browning was leading us that way.
So, in the lesson plan format that your teachers are going to get, that you might have a copy of, well, you will get a copy of it if you don't, but
Jim will send it out.
I will send it to you. But, it asks, in the science and math planning, it says prerequisite knowledge. And
Which would be the TEKS plus anything else that they
Yes.
might know.
But when your teachers say, well, I don't have a copy of the blah, blah, blah TEKS, in their books that they got, the BSLs, the benchmarks for science literacy, NSTA does a great job of saying, you know, these are
All the national
things,
standards.
these are the things that your kids need to know. So if they don't have a copy handy of the grade level before TEKS, they have those books,
They're online.
and they're online.
Well, and
yeah, I
Lead
mean, but-
Forward even puts them
Okay.
together for
They
you for
scaffold them.
free. They put them all together so that you can see them. I mean, it's so
But
easy.
I'll tell you.
Has that been done with all the new teaks that
Yes.
they're now
They're
introducing?
Yes.
updated.
Because
Math,
that's
yes.
New math.
really what we're gonna need to introduce.
Now,
But the
in your
beer.
notebooks, didn't you get a bunch of TEKS?
Yes, I did, I saw those.
But I think what
Yes.
Jen's saying is you should always look at the national standards, not just the previous grade level TEKS, but the national standards to see what they should to know. Just by reading the national standards, you can learn the math or learn the science.
There's also a book that your teachers don't get that's amazing. It's about this big. and there's 3 of
Atlas.
them, and it's the
Atlas.
Atlas, the science
They're only
Atlas.
$10,000 a piece.
Well, they're not that expensive, and it would probably be
How
good
much are
for
they?
you guys to get 1 set,
To share.
maybe 2.
We'll bring a sample in.
But they're amazing because there are flow charts that anybody could read.
Updated.
No,
Well,
they're not, they're science. There's
Oh.
national standards, so they're not
Because
TEKS.
they're talking science. not
Right,
math
but
at this point.
that's what you have to do as a teacher, is you have to wrestle with those things intellectually to understand them. It's not as good to hand them a chart that's done for them, but it's less time consuming. But unless they're really willing to wrestle with that chart to understand it, it's not gonna make sense. But I wanna go back to before that. Principals should hold teachers accountable for knowing what those prior knowledge are in those lesson plans. And if I go into a classroom and I see that students are not understanding, then my question to the teacher after the debriefing, why didn't you stop what you were doing? It was obvious that they didn't understand. You don't just march through the lesson because we're in there. You do whatever those students need. But you should know what they don't know before that lesson. You do that with pre-test, you do it with questioning. I mean, there's a lot of ways to know what they don't know. But the other thing is, we have teachers in this project who are telling me that teachers from prior grade levels are not teaching the TEKS. They're not doing the 40% hands-on.
Because it's absolutely true.
That's a principal's job, and it's also the teacher's job for peer pressure to go back in and say, you're not teaching, whatever, and when they get to this grade level, they haven't had that prior knowledge.
But see, that's why I was saying 5th grade is so important, because that's where there's a divide. You go K through 5, and then there are a lot of changes. You go into middle school at 6, and 5 has a different methodology of how to teach it, different rules that they're using that we have to unteach and reteach a whole new set because we haven't gotten together and said blah, blah, blah.
I
and
don't
it's-
see that science should be taught any different in 5th grade than 6th grade or
It's
12th
mostly
grade.
math, all the
It's math
tricks
I'm
and
talking
shortcuts.
about, really.
But
It's not science.
here's a great thing, the middle school principals in Comal were fed up, and I feel their pain, because when I went into, as an elementary administrator, I was so frustrated. They presented to elementary principals the untruths that are being taught in lower level math. And so what they did is they asked for the elementary principals to be looking for those untruths, because it's true, and I just will use my own personal example of kids telling me, you can never divide a smaller number by a bigger number, and then I said, you can. Well, my 4th grade teacher said no, or my 3rd grade Miss so-and-so said no, and in elementary school, that teacher is a goddess, and she knows everything, and to have them unlearn, but the elementary teacher is telling it out of the goodness of her heart to make it easier for the kid to set the problem up correctly, but she's teaching an untruth, and so they had the 6 untruths that do you remember that, Denise? Were you in there when Sean and Chris and Mike all presented, or no, actually it was just Chris and Sean, and they presented the untruths that are being taught in elementary school math that middle school teachers are asking to please stop. And then what that started was vertical alignment meetings, between 6th and 5th and 4th, and I just think it's important. And that's where we were talking about, the best science teachers that I've observed are the ones that have a science background upper level, because then they don't teach untruths. They know what's coming forward. So I guess it's just making sure our elementary math teachers understand.
Higher math.
Okay, we're gonna run out of time here, and
Okay, wait a
we're
minute, I need
identifying
to-
all the problems, we're not doing anything about it. And so I'm gonna ask you to do something about it. You and your partner come up with a faculty meeting, professional development, right now, to fix this problem.
Well, you already hit on part of the solution. Was to be clear about what the truths are.
Right.
And to require a meeting with.
Okay, you only have an hour in your faculty meeting.
Elementary.
How are you gonna do it? You got 2 minutes to come up with a plan,
And do
you
it
and
at
your
an
partner.
administrative level. And then get get your teachers involved and share at a vertical level, okay, you know, this is what the administrators have said, this is how you can help us. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe a strategy meeting that says, okay, if you wanna do it this way, why can't you? Well, you can't because of this. Well, could you do it this way? No, that could work. Where they really sit down and they really go head to head and have a discussion to see, well, this is why we use it this way, because otherwise there's